if you sort of read between the lines and just our conversations with Austin Ekeler as well, so definitive Joe Ortiz interview, the definitive Austin Ekeler interview that we did, feels like, yeah, like, he just said there's going to be a lot of interest in him. He didn't say, like, from us as well. Like
right.
And I also, Connor, I'm curious to you as
great
somebody.
Story.
Right. I mean, no, great, like, said all the right things, and I don't think it's out of the question of him coming back to the Chargers if after free agency goes through and, like, but I think that it's unlikely the deal he's going to want, that Austin Ekeler's going to want, is going to be with the Chargers. I also, there's a question for you, Connor, in terms of, as you've watched Harbaugh offenses and Greg Roman offenses, doesn't feel like Ekeler is the kind of running back they build around.
No, it does not. And I think Austin understands that himself, if I remember correctly, talking from the Super Bowl. Just what that scheme is going to ask you to do, how downhill it's going to be, how run-heavy it is. The best aspect of Austin Ekeler's game is his ability as a pass catcher. So while we could sit here and say, hey, the Chargers probably are going to look elsewhere, I think Austin Ekeler would like to look elsewhere. And this is his one shot to cash in. And it's funny to me, the two names we're going to talk about next that are officially not getting franchise tag, Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry, they are better fits for what Jim Harbaugh's Chargers are going to be than Austin Ekeler staying.
Yeah,
so.
I would agree with that.
Yep. It is, I mean, and not sneakily, this is the most loaded running back free agency class I can remember, between Tony Pollard and Saquon and Derrick Henry and Jacobs and Austin Ekeler.
Right.
And it feels, it's kind of depressing in a way that it just doesn't feel like it's a big deal in a way, because it feels like running backs are more interchangeable now. Obviously, they have their own strengths. I think that a lot of these guys are going to get better than what they showed the previous year. Like, we forget, like, we're a year removed from Josh Jacobs winning the rushing title. Derrick Henry is still a monster. He just has no offensive line. Ekeler was banged up all last season. Tony Pollard, people forget as well, he broke his leg and was coming back from that. So I think these guys.
And Saquon is Saquon.
And Saquon was fine this year. It's just the team was a mess. So I think these guys will lift. It certainly seems.
But the problem is that the challenge is, right, is that if you're on the other side, if you're Joe Ortiz or whoever, and you sit there and say, listen, Josh Jacobs, I get it. You won the rushing title. You're awesome. But by the way, you went down at the end of the year. The Raiders were terrible. Aiden O'Connell's behind center, like it's, and yet Zamir White put up similar numbers, like fourth round. I think Zamir White was like a fourth round pick, right?
Pick, yes.
So like, my point is like, that's their argument is like, if I'm the Raiders and I was able to get the same production out of Zamir White as I did Josh Jacobs, why am I going to pay a Josh Jacobs when I'm better off just going to the draft and picking a guy in the third or fourth round,
right,
or waiting for the bigger names to get, picked off, and then you listen, Tajay Spears was just in. Derrick Henry is awesome and one of the best running backs since he's been in the league, but Tajay Spears, again, behind a bad Titans offensive line, was in many ways more dynamic than Derrick Henry last year.
Yep. The worst thing possible for all of these guys, honestly, is Kyron Williams, and the fact that guy can come out of nowhere and now might be RB2 going into next season behind McCaffrey. I think that is in play. And also, like, with these guys and with some of the ages that they're getting to, like, do we know definitively that Josh Jacobs next year is going to be a better running back than Ty Chandler? Like, I don't know.
No, exactly. And you think about, I think like people were surprised when the Vikings didn't want to pay Dalvin Cook, and then he goes to the Jets.
And it was over.
It was over.
It was clearly over. They knew when to move on.
Yeah.
These teams know when to move on.
And the Ravens signed him for the stretch run, and they barely used him. And the Ravens could have used him. And so you just sort of, by the way, it also just goes to show, like, what a crazy career Latavius Murray has had. Who's still getting,
he'll be 35.
I mean, still like, he was scoring touchdowns for the Bills last year.
Right.
Like,
but you almost wonder if it's benefited him that he's never been that guy, that he's always been the number 2 or 3, that his body, and Latavius Murray's like 230 pounds, that he's held up every year. Where these guys get run to the ground and it's over.
Are you shocked about, like, I don't mean to get into a whole running back discussion, but like, I just think about this, like that Leonard Fournette, like, barely got a sniff last year. A year after having a great year for the Buccaneers, and then
that's
nothing.
it.
And then nothing. And like, he was on the Bills practice squad. He played like a game or two, but basically like a
Ty
cup of
Johnson
coffee.
got play over him.
Yes.
For the Bills. The Bills were like, no, we have our guys. Fournette, we're going to let him go.
To me, the most interesting guy, and this is a little maybe weird to say, but to me, the most interesting guy of all these players is Derrick Henry, because Henry had no offensive line whatsoever on the Titans last year. Like, it was a mess. Right. They might have had the worst offensive line in football. He still showed flashes, and by the advanced stuff, like his PFF grade, like, Derrick Henry was still awesome. And for as much as, running backs, what Aaron Schatz and Football Outsiders had like the rule of 370. If you get like 370 carries, you go over that, you just don't come back. Derrick Henry has broken all those rules his career. He came back from a broken foot, and then the next year was just dominant again. So Derrick Henry might just break all the rules of science.
In the same season. Didn't he
he came back for the playoff.
Playoffs?
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, you think about, especially if Derrick Henry is able to get to a situation where he doesn't have to carry the ball 20, think about Derrick Henry on Baltimore.
Yeah, and the Gus
or
Edwards
Dallas.
role.
Right,
Derrick
exactly.
Henry. Yeah.
But it's Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Right. Suddenly, he becomes very efficient. But it is. I feel bad for these running backs. We like them and everything, and their running back is important and they should be paid. But it's also I get it from the, Kyron Williams, Ty Chandler, Zamir White. These guys that Isaiah Pacheco just won the Super Bowl. He was a 7th-round pick.
Right. And this year, we might not have a running back go in the first 2 rounds, but then 12 are going to go in the 3rd and 4th rounds.
Right.
So deciphering it this year is going to be absolutely fascinating.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.